begin shortly.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. Happy early Valentine's Day from San Francisco State University to you and your loved ones. We had a lot of interest in tonight's program, which warms my heart. I think that tells us there's a lot of love and hope, good feelings out there amongst our alumni. My name is Nicole Lang. I work at the university, and most importantly, I'm also a very proud alumna from the class of 1993. Tonight, I'm joining you from San Francisco. We've had a lot of fun asking people where they're joining us from, and no pressure, but last week we had someone from Madrid, which I think might be our furthest away. So let us know where you're joining us tonight from. One of the silver linings of this situation is we've just been able to reach out to people across the United States, across the world, and it's been really wonderful to be able to connect with our alumni, no matter where you are now. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about what's going on at San Francisco State. We are, for the Alumni Association, right now we're working on our affinity group programs, and I can tell you we'll be launching in the summer. And clearly we have a lot of alumni with a strong affinity for food events and wine events, and so we will be offering more programming like that. I'm very proud of our team, and I want to give a special thank you to Ken, my Shiro, who planned tonight's event, and our entire events team and alumni relations team. And I'm very proud to say that this type of programming is now award-winning. We are all part of CASE, which is a professional organization for advancement professionals. And some of our earlier programming this year, our movie night and interviews with alumni authors have been recognized as award-winning by that organization. So we're very proud to continue to bring you events like tonight, and let us know what you'd like to see from us. I am also wanting to give you a little update about what our students are up to there during this entire year. It's been almost a year now. They have adapted so beautifully. I mean, their perseverance, their hard work, they're all still on track to graduate. And one of the ways in which we can help them do that is we have something at San Francisco State called the Hope Crisis Fund. And really this is for students who might need just a small bit of money. All the grants are usually grants of money are under $600. And it's for things such as maybe a new laptop. Maybe they found a job and they need to purchase a new uniform and they need the money to purchase that. These things that make a real difference in their lives. So if you are interested in continuing to support our students or hearing more about that, I think that is one program where you can make a real difference right away. So they just put the link up to get some more information from that in the chat. And tonight, I saw this question asked. Yes, we're going to be sending a link out to this program to everyone who registered. So make sure you keep your eyes open for that email, and we will we'll get that out to you. Make sure you also ask a lot of questions, because I've watched Tim Shaw in action before, and he can do many things at once. He's going to make an amazing meal, and he's going to answer all your questions. And we're able to put on these kinds of programming because we work so closely with hospitality and tourism management and the department at San Francisco State. And the chair of that department is joining us tonight. I get to introduce him, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the program. Chair Colin Johnson. He received his PhD from Freiburg University in Switzerland, and he has worked in a wide variety of locations, everything from the airline industries, hotels, private member clubs, retail restaurants. And this one, I was excited to see. And I wasn't sure if I'd mentioned, because I know that there's a lot of team loyalty out there, but it looks like he also worked for Manchester United. So people might have some opinions about that. We'll let that be worked out in the chat. But for now, thank you again for joining us. I'm very excited and happy to turn this over to Professor and Chair and Dr. Colin Johnson.
Thank you, Nicole, and welcome everybody, and good evening to you all. Yes, I'm Colin Johnson, Chair of Hospitality and Tourism Management at San Francisco State. I've been at San Francisco State about 13 years. You may know we have a well-regarded, well-respected program of hospitality and tourism management at San Francisco. We prepare our students for careers in the events, hotels, restaurants, theme parks, cruise liners, all these kinds of things. But of course, we've been badly affected by COVID. Probably our sector has been the most affected by the pandemic. Just by way of statistics, New York City, for example, reckon they won't be back to pre-COVID levels until about 2025 in terms of travel and tourism. Many of the airports are running at something like 90% below their regular capacity for this time of year. And normally this time of the year, we will be preparing our students for our big fundraiser, the Taste of the Bay. Unfortunately, we can't be doing that, but we have got something interesting going on. It's made us think about how we do things and how we probably will do things differently in the future. We will come back in hospitality and travel and tourism, but I think we will come back in a different form. So this time next week, or just over this time next week, next Friday, we have a very interesting seminar going on as part of our business ethics weeks concerned with food, future of food and social justice. We've got some great speakers there, and we can prepare you for the link if you would like to be involved in that. Turning now to our guest chef for this evening. It seems these events are very popular. I know Sybil did a terrific job last week with the Lunar New Year. And Tim, I've introduced once before for his Italian soup, wasn't it? That was the last thing I think we were involved in together. I've known Tim for something like over 10 years now. He's an inspiring, creative and passionate chef. He's been a chef, of course, for many celebrities. Maybe one day, Tim, you could be a celebrity chef. Who knows? I think you've got all the capabilities there. We hope you'll enjoy this evening's presentation, and I know many of you are even going to be cooking as you go along. We feel sure Tim's going to create something for you that you'll enjoy as part of your Valentine's evening or day, wherever you are. So thank you, Tim. I'll hand back over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that introduction. Again, this is maybe the third event I've done for the Alumni Association. We did sandwiches, we did Shapino, and when we were talking about what to do with this, I like cooking vegetarian food. I'm not vegetarian, and sort of the idea behind this menu was that oftentimes when you're cooking for sort of, I don't know if you call them bipolar couples or bi-culinary couples, like vegetarians who are with carnivores. It always seems like the meat dish seems to get the main attention, and then the vegetarian dish is sort of an afterthought. So I thought that this would be a perfect dish to demonstrate for the vegetarians, because this is a dish that's a vegan dish, it's a vegetarian dish, it's a fantastic, flavorful dish, and the meat is almost the second thought on the side. This is a dish that can be made with meat, it can be made vegetarian, it can be made vegan, but there are so many flavors, there's so much going on that it's, I've done this in the Vista Room a couple times, and some people came in and tried it and were shocked. They're like, oh, what was that meat? And I'm like, there was no meat in that. It was really, really great. So and as Colin said, I've worked as a chef, I've worked as an educator now for a little over 15 years and love the teaching aspect. But one of the funnest jobs I've had in my long and winding career, I was a recipe tester for the Joy of Cooking, the 75th anniversary Joy of Cooking. And I learned a ton about recipes that sort of colors the way I try to teach cooking. When I'm teaching a recipe, I try to get to the sort of the techniques behind the recipe to give students the confidence and the competence to take the recipe that's there and kind of customize it to their own flavors. I consider myself a success at the end of the day if I get students to make food that isn't just sort of mimicking what I've done, but are giving them sort of the agency to know that you're cooking for yourself. So I've written down a recipe that I've done. It works. I don't know if I've ever done it the same way twice. I've added different spices, I've added different ingredients, but it's basically a stew that you can customize to make whatever your flavors are. Like, for instance, it says 2 cloves of garlic. If you love garlic, put in 10 cloves of garlic. If you don't like garlic, leave garlic out. Garlic isn't what the recipe is about. It's a stew, it's a Moroccan stew, it's a Moroccan tajine. I have my tajine in the back. A tajine it's a cooking vessel, but it's also the word for stew. And I will get to this and I will show you how to use this. But when you're using one of these, it's basically like a slow cooker. So it cooks for 2 or 3 hours. So I'm gonna do the tajine on the stove top, and I'm gonna get that going first off. And then I'm gonna show you how to work with this, but I'll probably put that in the oven at the end and it'll cook for 2 or 3 hours, and then I'll eat that later. So if you have any questions about anything, please ask. I'll get to them as we go along. I hope you got all the recipes in the menu. It's going to be a citrus salad with arugula and some feta sprinkled on top, which you can leave off if you're vegan. It's a beautiful salad, even without the cheese. And then it's going to be it's a Moroccan, it's a chickpea and yam tajine. And then there's going to be chicken on the side. And I had wanted to grill off the chicken outside, but it's pouring rain here in Pacifica. So I did have to grill the chicken off in my little grill over in the corner of my kitchen. I'm glad I did it before you all showed up, because it made the kitchen really, really smoky. But what I took is these are just boneless chicken thighs with the skin on. I sprinkled some of the spices that we're going to use in the stew. So it's coriander, cumin, a little cinnamon and salt and pepper. And I let it marinate in the refrigerator for a couple hours. And then I just grilled it off on my stove grill. So I'm going to pop this in the oven. The oven's at 350 for probably 15, 20 minutes. I wanted to get that going so we could get some stuff done. And what I want to do is I want to start assembling the stew. So I'm going to show you a couple techniques to get the stew going, because the stew itself takes about 45 minutes to cook. Even on the stove top, if it was in the stove, it would take 2 or 3 hours. So I'll give you a couple techniques. I'll give you a couple techniques. We'll get it going, and then I'll answer questions. So if you have questions, hold on to them. I'll try to answer them as we go along, but we have to make a stew in half an hour. So the basics of this stew, and let me turn this down here. First sort of technique I will show you. I've done this. This is how most recipes start, is with a diced onion. And I'm going to take my onion, which I've cut in half. I save my onion trimmings. Let me actually put this in the chat. Whenever I cook this stuff, I make onions or something, I save my onion trimmings to make vegetable stock. I have a bag in my freezer that has carrot trimmings, onion trimmings, mushroom trimmings. And when that gets full, I make a vegetable stock. I just put in the chat a video that I've been making for my students. I have a YouTube channel with 68 subscribers. So I'm almost at Kardashian level. That'll show you how to make vegetable stock. But when I'm cutting my onion, the 2 sort of techniques I'll show you here right away is the best way to cut an onion is I want all of the vegetables I'm cutting, I want to make them about the size of a chickpea, because the chickpea is sort of the main ingredient, or it's the protein ingredient. So the onions, the sweet potatoes, the tomatoes, I want everything to kind of mirror the shape or the size of a chickpea. So I'm going to take my onion and give one cut parallel to the board, but not all the way to the root. You might have seen this on TV shows or learned this if you were in class with me. And then I'm going to turn it and I'm going to make perpendicular cuts, but still not going to the root, so it's still kind of held together. And then when I take my knife again, I'm going to cut through and get nice sized onions that are even and they look relatively chickpea size. This little root I put into my bowl that I'm going to use to make vegetable stock. So I've got my onion, and what I want to do, I got to call my cameraman in. Could you come in here? Oh no. He's on his union break. My husband's my cameraman. Here he comes. So what I'm going to do, wait, actually first, before I do that, I'm going to get this going. I'm going to add my spices while I do this. When you're working with spices, the trick is whole spices last longer. A lot of people buy spices and they sit in their cabinet for months or years and years and years. No, not close this. But spices have a best by date. They don't go bad in that they'll make you sick, but they lose their flavor over time. So if you buy, allspice because you put it in your holiday muffins, and after 7 or 8 years, your holiday muffins don't taste very good. I meant cookies. I don't know what holiday muffins are. Holiday cookies, like gingerbread or something. It's because spices lose their flavor over time. So working with whole spices is going to give you better flavor because the whole spices they keep their flavor 2 or 3 times longer than once it's been ground. So when I'm working with spices, I like to crush them myself. I don't always. I'm not all that extra. I certainly buy ground cardamom and ground coriander and ground cumin, but when I really want to get a good flavor, I use the whole spices. This is a mortar and a pestle, and all you do is you put them in and you crush them. That smells awesome right now. Woo! And this is just whole coriander, one of my favorite spices, and whole cumin. You smell that? Yeah. That's kind of how easy they grind up. I didn't break a sweat. I kind of broke a sweat, but that's just because I'm out of shape because of COVID, not because it was all that difficult. And I'm going to take a tablespoon that's mixed with a little cinnamon and some red pepper flakes. The cinnamon was already ground. You can try to grind cinnamon in a mortar and pestle, but you'll break a sweat. Best to just work with the ground stuff. So would you bring the camera over here, please? Okay. There we go. I'll hold it up a little bit so they can see into the pot. Nice. So what I'm going to do, the first part of building this stew is going to be putting a little olive oil in the bottom. Get the heat going. And I'm going to add my onions. Oh, a little piece of paper. And let my onions sweat for a couple minutes. While they're sweating, I have to show you our camera stand is some adult juice boxes. Put it back here. So I'm going to do my garlic.
Not a product placement.
So the best way to cut garlic or smash garlic, you could use a garlic press. I don't like using garlic presses because they leave a lot of stuff behind in the garlic press. So the best way to work with the garlic is just take a whole clove and smash it against your board and just kind of mashing. This way your hands don't smell like garlic. You're catching all the oil and you're getting a nice, beautiful mash. Once you've got it all kind of mashed like that, you could go over it once to make them nice and small. Boom, boom, boom. That's how you get a nice minced garlic. And I'm going to now flip over this because I don't want my fruit to taste like garlic. Come back here. So while the onions are sweating, smelling nice. While the onions are sweating, I'm going to add my spices. Herbs we tend to add at the end of cooking because fresh herbs lose their flavor as they cook. Spices, their flavor blooms as they cook. So while the onions continue to sweat, the onions are going to get more and more potent. And that's going to sit there for probably 4 or 5 minutes or so while that's doing that. While those are sweating, I'm going to explain to you the difference between sweet potatoes and yams. They're very different vegetables. Most people in America, we kind of call sweet potatoes yams and vice versa, but they're very different vegetables. This is generally what people think of as a sweet potato. It's got a kind of a reddish skin and a very orange flesh. They're very sweet, but they're not particularly starchy and they get very mushy. And they're fine for this dish, but what works even better is what is actually a yam. And a yam looks more like a potato. Can you see that color? There you go. But when you peel them, the flesh itself, when that's coming across on the color, the flesh is more purple. It's purple and mottled. Sometimes it's almost red and mottled. The difference being they're not at all related. Neither is a sweet potato a potato. It's actually a completely different vegetable. But a yam, see how nice and purple that is? That's beautiful. It's starchier, so it maintains its structure. So when you're cooking with it, it's not really great to make mashed yams. It wouldn't make a very good sweet potato pie, but it's great in a stew because it's going to keep its, if not necessarily its crunch, it's not going to fall apart the way that a sweet potato falls apart. So I'm cutting these again into kind of chickpea-sized pieces. And then I'm going to add them to my bowl of sweet potatoes. And in this recipe, since most people probably bought sweet potatoes as sweet potatoes, and they're again fine for this recipe, this is the white sweet potato. So this is a garnet sweet potato, and this is just a sweet potato, but this is actually a yam. You find them at Asian grocery stores, Latin grocery stores, Hispanic grocery stores will sell them. I occasionally see them at like Safeway or something, but very rarely. You usually see the sweeter sweet potatoes, and they're fine, but they are the purple ones are starchier, so they hold their shape better as they cook. So bring the camera back over here. That smells so amazing. As the spices are kind of blooming and the onion is kind of cooking, what I'm going to do is add in my tomatoes, and these are whole tomatoes. I bought Muir Glen organic tomatoes, which I don't usually buy, but they were on sale, like 3 cans for $5. So I figured, why not? So I'm going to add those in with the liquid. I'm going to wash my hand. I'm going to add my garlic to this. I didn't want to saute the garlic because garlic can burn really, really quickly. So it releases its flavor better in the liquid. And then to that, I'm going to add in some of my potatoes. And I'm putting in all 3 varieties for a nice textural experience. To that, I'm also going to add a little bit of vegetable stock. I don't think I need much because there's so much of the tomato liquid. And then, of course, a little pinch of salt, a little pinch of pepper. Now this, finishing up the stew part, This is a stew with olives. It's a very common ingredient in sort of Moroccan, North African, Mediterranean cooking to do salt and sweet. The salty aspect of this dish is going to be some olives. I have some sliced Kalamata olives and I have some whole picholines. Why those? Because those were the ones I had in my fridge. Sometimes it's that easy. Whatever olives you like are perfectly fine for this. But they give a nice saltiness and add a nice kind of umami flavor to it. And there we go. That's going to sit and it's going to stew for probably 20, 25 minutes or so. Can you use fresh tomatoes? Yes, of course you can certainly use fresh tomatoes. You're probably going to need more liquid, more vegetable stock if you use fresh tomatoes. Unless they're super fresh tomatoes in like August or September when, you know, they're at their ripest. But if it's really hot out, this would be, actually this would be a good stew in the summer. So yes, if you're using fresh tomatoes, you're gonna have less liquid, so you'd need more vegetable stock. You can use whatever olives you like. That's the beauty of something like this. And again, what I try to teach while I'm get across while I'm teaching is you're cooking for yourself. So if you like black olives, use black olives. If you only like niçoise, use niçoise, or just use whatever olives you have available. The dates are going to go in towards the end because they'll absorb liquid and they're more of a garnish at the end. So I'll show you that when we actually plate that up. So we have our stew cooking. We have our chicken in the oven. I want to show you our salad now. I think you're okay for now. I'll call you if I need you.
Okay.
Thank you. He's on his union break now. Will it get salty with olives and salt? Well, that's why you taste it. I put in like the littlest bit of salt, and then I put in the olives, and then when it's done, we're going to taste it and see if it needs any more. I don't know if you saw how little salt I put in. But I put in probably like that much. That's shiny. That's like not even 1/8 of a teaspoon. Seasoning is all learning how, again, to flavor it for yourself and season as you go along. If it's getting too salty or if it's getting too hot, stop adding seasoning. But the dates, yes, the dates go in at the end. Okay, so our salad. What we're gonna do with our salad is I have, well, I'll show you what I assembled already. It's a citrus salad, so it's a base of different citrus. And I have here, this is a ruby red grapefruit, we have a blood orange, we have little satsuma oranges, and we have a caracara orange. So I'm going to show you how to peel those so that we can make the base of this salad. And I have here a blood orange, it's blood orange season. What I want to do is I want to cut off the top, I want to cut off the bottom, I want to peel off the sticker. And you want to take your knife, I think that's a good angle, and peel off the skin. And you don't want to be conservative here. You really want to get off all of the white part. A peeler is not going to work for something like this. You really have to use your knife to go around. And what's left on the pieces, we call this the chef's portion. So I take those and I squeeze them out and then I drink that myself. That's so delicious. Sometimes the chefs save the best things for themselves. And then what I'm gonna do is with a super sharp knife, cut little rounds and try to keep them as intact as possible. And it really helps to have a really, really sharp knife here. And if a piece breaks, that's the one you get to eat. So I got a couple more pieces of orange. And you do that for whatever you find at the store. I found Like I said, I found cara. I found a nice ruby red grapefruit. These little oranges at the Asian market were fantastic. They're like a real mandarin orange. So unbelievably sweet, with a nice little citrus kick to them at the end. Let me clean this off. Turn this down. Switch the roux. Wipe off my board. And we will make our vinaigrette. So the beauty of this dish is we have our base. The base of our salad is going to be these citruses. And then the main part of the salad, I'm going to take a lemon. I'm going to take some of my blood orange. I'm going to squeeze it in. That'll become part of our vinaigrette. You want to match the flavors. In this bowl was a little bit of the grapefruit juice that I had earlier. I'm going to set this over it, and I'm going to take a lemon. Squeeze in some lemon juice. The lemon juice gives the acidity, which you would usually get in the form of the vinegar. If you were making a vinaigrette, this is technically, I guess you'd call it a citronette, since it's citrus rather than vinegar. And again, a little pinch of salt. But again, if you see how little salt that is, see it dripping down in there? That's like the barest pinch. A little pepper, and then a little olive oil. And there's no hard and fast rule of how much vinegar to olive oil. In general, it's about 3 to 1. You want to whisk it up, give it a little taste. I could actually use a little bit more lemon juice. It's got a really nice flavor of that blood orange. And there we go. Use this end. Beautiful. So that's our vinaigrette. It's lemon juice. It's juice from the oranges, a nice fruity olive oil, and salt and pepper. That's all you need for a really, really nice vinaigrette. I will dress the salad once everything else is done, but I'll let the vinaigrette sit to the side. Let me clean off my area here. It's getting a little messy. So I think we are at the portion of our show where I can show you, if we were cooking this in a tajine, how we would do it. So I have my tajine. The beauty of these dishes, or of these pots, is they, I didn't see which dog that was. We have 2. The boy is Sebastian, the girl is Cooper. I almost forgot her name for a second. You know what? Fruity olive oil, I knew someone was going to ask that question, and I'm at that point where I'm still sort of a new enough Californian that I love going to wineries and buying local olive oils and using them. But I've found some that are fantastic, like the Olive Press, which I think it's at Jacuzzi Winery. There's one called let me type it out. They sell them at the farmer's market, but none that I would say like, oh my God, you have to try this olive oil. There's so many good olive oils in this area. Find one that you really, really like. Capers are awesome. I put capers in everything. So if you don't have olives, capers are fantastic. But what you kind of want to do with the capers, stir them in at the end, because if they cook for 45 minutes or so on the stove, they'll fall apart, and then they're just salt. So if you have capers, because they're so small, I'd stir them in at the end, like we're going to do with the dates. Is what I'd recommend for capers. But I love capers. I put capers in, I put them in my martinis sometimes. So what we're going to do with the tajine, as I mentioned, a tajine, it's a cooking vessel. It's also a stew. The trick with these is that they tend to be large, so I'm not using this for today because this would make enough for a dozen people. And this is just me and Adam. They're also tricky in that they can be, you can use them on the stovetop if you have like a metal, what's it called, like a dispersion shield. So it's like a metal disc you put on the stove so it disperses the heat more evenly so it doesn't crack. It's also huge in the oven. And a trick with these, whenever you're working with clay, like I have a Romer Toff clay pot and other clay pots, is that if you put them into a hot oven cold, they can crack. So they're kind of fussy. The shape of them, the reason why they're shaped like this is so that as the heat or as the liquid sort of evaporates, it condenses on the side and then drips back to the middle and sort of condenses back in. So you start this convection, which cooks the stuff and keeps the liquid inside the stew. But it's really, technologically, it's the same thing as a crock pot or as a cast iron pan. Like this is my cast iron pan. It's got these little nubbins on it. These do the same thing. They increase the surface area, so they increase the liquid that drips back in to a stew or anything. So there's no magic of what a tajine does. And they can be tricky because they can crack. And they're huge. So if I was making this for two of us, we'd be eating this for the next 4 or 5 days. But since it is a tajine, I'm gonna show you, if you wanted to do it with a tajine, how to use them. So what we're gonna do is inside, usually when you're making a stew in a tajine, the bottom is going to be a layer of onions because they kind of, keep stuff from burning to the bottom, because if onions burn a little bit, that nice crispiness gives flavor. And then on top, you just layer everything. So if this is a chickpea stew, I'd put the sweet potatoes there. I'd put my chickpeas on top and kind of build this mound. I'd put some of the olives in the center. And then I'd sprinkle the spice. And again, a little bit of salt. You don't need oil for this because this is going to release its own liquid. And then I'm going to add in some of the tomato juice with the tomato, like that. So it's got its liquid. You're not getting that sauteing part, but the flavors sort of bloom and blossom, because if I was cooking this, I can't cook it right now because the chicken's in the oven. But if I cook this, you just take this whole thing with this setup. And if you were doing meat, you just put the meat right on top of it, spread around, and then just goes in a cold oven, about 350 degrees, and it cooks for 2 to 3 hours. So it's basically, it's just a slow cooker. It just happens to be a really pretty slow cooker. And to be honest, I've used this a couple times to cook. Mainly I use this as a serving vessel. So like if we have people over, we put rice and stuff on the bottom, carry it out to the table, and we're like, ooh, look how pretty. But don't usually cook in it because it takes up the entire oven. And as I said, it doesn't really add anything that a slow cooker or a cast iron pot would add to it as well. So that's a tajine. Onions on the bottom, the main ingredients, just pile it all up, put it in the oven, and it roasts, and it sort of self-bastes for a good couple hours. And they're fun, but there's nothing super magical about them, except for they're really pretty. Did I already put the chickpeas in? No, the chickpeas I have not put into the one that's on the stove, but I'm about to do a Martha Stewart because yes, you can use the tajine on the stove top, but it's best if you have a diffusion plate that sits underneath it, so it's not sitting right on the heat. And it can sit on the heat, but it's on a gas stove in particular, if the heat is too high, it can crack. But it can sit, these were made to sit on stoves, and hundreds of years ago, you just put them right into a fire and they just heated up on the fire. So I'm missing a question here. I appreciate your normal human being explanation. Oh, okay. Thank you. How high can you pile the ingredients? I don't know. You wouldn't want to go too high, because if it got too high up, then once all the liquid starts being released, it would come out of the bottom. So I wouldn't pile it up so it's actually hitting the top. But this could hold probably 2 or 3 times more than what's actually in here. This is just a conservative amount because I don't want to waste a bunch of food. So, yeah. Okay, so let's finish our tajine. Do you need to warm up the oven to a certain temperature? Most tajines, I think, would say probably around like 350, 375. But again, you want to put them in a cold oven so that they don't explode. Because if you put cold ceramic into a hot oven, they could crack. So you'd put it in a cold oven, and I would say 350, 375. I think more than that, unless there was a lot of liquid, it might crack or something. But I don't think there's any, the idea of a tajine is to cook low and slow over a couple hours. So I think the lower you go, the better off it would be, 350 or so. Can you make this in a slow cooker? You can absolutely make this dish in a slow cooker. A crock pot, I guess you could do it in an Instapot as well. I've never been really successful with beans in an Instapot. I tend to blow them out. I love my Instapot for certain things, but I've never successfully cooked chickpeas. I end up making a lot of hummus when I cook chickpeas because they overcook. And I've cooked them as little as like 10 or 12 minutes, and they still completely overcook in my Instapot. But this in a slow cooker, this is a dish that's made for a slow cooker. Throw everything at the beginning of the morning, come back at night, and you've got your dinner and it's ready to go. So in that Martha Stewart way, and I worked for Martha Stewart for 2 weeks years ago. I've made the stew that I just made, but earlier this afternoon, I made the same thing. Any other bean, butter beans would be beautiful. Like the big butter beans would be great. Northern beans, yeah, just some other type of bean, but a nice meaty bean. I wouldn't think that like I think lentils would probably overcook if you did this with lentils. But like butter beans, this kind of beans, the really big, they're kind of like baby lima beans. Those I think would be fantastic in this. And yes, you can soak the clay pot in water. It helps. I wouldn't necessarily say it always prevents cracking, but it helps lower the chance that it would actually crack. Yes, but this one, most tajines now, particularly ones you buy in America, they're enameled, so they're less likely to crack, but there's still a part on the bottom that's not enameled, so it still could crack. I mean, glass and ceramic and stuff, they crack, but soaking it in water would help replicate. And again, with all the substitutions here, make this recipe for yourself. If you don't like dates, use apricots, use prunes, use raisins. This would be great with raisins. Sprinkle almonds on top, pistachios on top would be delicious on this. So there's no magic that the dates are there. They're a sweet element that complements the salty element of the olives. If you wanted to do capers and apricots, that would be delicious as well. I have not substituted yams with butternut squash. I would find butternut squash, I think, would probably overcook, but that does sound delicious. I've never done that, but you could certainly try it and see if it works. But I would cook it a lot, not as long, maybe 20, 30 minutes, because butternut squash, like most squashes, pumpkins and stuff like that, they would get they get mushy, which could be good. I mean, maybe that would fall apart and make become part of the sauce. But butternut squash can be very, very soft. So, okay. So, Adam, come on back, please. And I'm going to confess to you, I wish this dish, the side that you serve it with, it would go great with couscous. It would go great with rice. Basmati rice is really good. You could zhuzh it up and do like couscous with peas and, do a whole separate dish of the couscous. I have two friends who just started a catering company, and I've been buying food from them to help support their business. So we're going to be serving this with basmati rice that they cooked themselves. So I'm not doing the side, but just whatever side works for you. Couscous, basmati rice. If you don't want a grain, if you're doing keto, you don't have to do a grain. That I think this would be filling enough as it is. So come on over here. Actually, you know what? I don't need you. I mean, I do need you, but I'm okay with this here. So in that Martha Stewart way, I added the chickpeas right before we started, and I have my dates, and I have some chopped herbs, and I'm going to plate this up because this has been cooking for probably 2 hours or so. And what's really interesting, if you can see this color, and I'll hold it up so you can see it, so I kind of get in there. The yams, they almost look like ham. I opened it up at one point and I was like, wow, I didn't put ham in there. So this is the stew. I stirred the chickpeas in because the chickpeas are cooked. So all they had to do was sort of heat through. Beautiful. And I think I really actually like the 3 different colors of potatoes in there. Whoops. There we go. I'm going to sprinkle some of the dates, and again, whatever fruit you want. And then I have cilantro and mint. The parsley at the store looked really, really bad, so I bought cilantro and mint. And then this morning, the cilantro looked really bad in my fridge. I was very kind of sad. I would have shown you chopping the cilantro, but it's very droopy, and I actually even had it sitting in water. So this is the stew. It's got the chickpeas, the 3 different sweet potatoes, tomatoes, olives, dates, parsley, mint. Smells really just fantastic. Let me get my other stuff out of the way. And since we do have to feed a carnivore as well, there are 2 ways we could do this. And as I said, I kind of want to make this dish about the vegetarian food and have the meat be an afterthought. But there are 2 ways we could serve this. One is we could just take a knife and kind of slice our chicken and just serve them on a side plate. Boom, boom, boom. And I like the chicken skin, which is why I left the chicken skin on. If you don't like chicken skin or you're doing low fat or something. And I did the thighs because I like the dark meat. If you prefer white meat, do the breast. And you know what? Actually, this would also be really good if you just did like a piece of cod or a grilled piece of salmon on top of this would be delicious. So we've got our chicken, but the other thing we could do, which sort of contaminates the rest of this stew, is just dice up the chicken, mix it into the stew, and now it's no longer a vegetarian stew, but I think we have enough of the vegetarian stuff sitting there. A bowl. And then make our carnivore have their own plate. Let me get this out of the way. I'm done with my cutting board. So I'll show you all of our iterations here with some of our greens. Boom, boom, boom. So you've got the chicken mixed in, you've got the chicken on the side, and then the last thing we need is our salad. So I've got my arugula. I put in a little of my dressing. Toss my arugula up. And dress the arugula over the salad. Boom, boom, boom. I think we can actually do a little bit more. And then on top of that, we're going to put a little bit of feta. This would also go really great with some goat cheese. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. So let's show you all this. We've got our salad with the citrus and the arugula. We've got a side of chicken rather than a side of vegetarian stuff. The meat eater gets the side tonight. We've got some stew with the chicken mixed in, and then we've got a big plate of stew just on its own. And as I said, when I serve this tonight, Adam and I eat it, we have some rice that we're gonna eat that our friend made just to support a friend's business. You kind of have to do that in this bizarre time. And that's it. I don't want you to see me. I want you to keep looking at the food. I think it came out really, really nice. Ooh, any questions? Would the chicken braised in the stew work? Oh, absolutely, yes. If you were making this for meat eaters, I would chop up the chicken into pieces and then stir that in. I'd probably put that in when I put in the tomatoes because the chicken needs to cook. So if you wanted to make this a meat-based dish, use the chicken and add it in a lot earlier to the beginning of the cooking time. How long did this cook on the stovetop? It takes about an hour for the potatoes to get cooked. I do use the lid, yes, and on a medium to low heat. I don't want it boiling. You don't want it boiling away. You're just basically cooking the potatoes is all you're doing. And I will also tell you, while we are going to eat this tonight, like most stews and most soups and lasagnas and stuff like that, they're much better a day or two later. So if you want to do this for Valentine's Day, cook it tomorrow or Saturday, because in the refrigerator overnight, all the flavors mix and mingle. Don't do the salad on Saturday, but like most stews, it gets better as it sits for a couple days. How and when would you use tofu? Tofu's already cooked, so if you needed to use tofu, I'd stir it in at the end. I'd stir it in when you were stirring in the chickpeas, because it's not really adding flavor to it, and it's already cooked. So I'd cut it into squares and then and just stir it in to heat it through. Any non-bean substitutions? You don't have to put the beans in it. I mean, the beans are there because as a legume, it makes it a complete protein for a vegetarian. But I'm not sure what you mean by non-bean. You could do this with just the sweet potatoes for sure. You could just make stewed sweet potatoes with the tomatoes and the olives and all of that. But if you took the beans out, you're just missing the protein. So if I hear you knock at the door, it's just me coming for dinner. Coming in, the dogs will bark. They usually do make an appearance. I'm surprised one of them only came in at the beginning. They ate right before this started, so they'd kind of stay out of the way.
Can we have a question about what kind of wine to pair with?
Oh my. Well, sadly tonight, you know what? I might break out a nice bottle of wine with this. A wine that would go well with this would be one of the, you got to think of where it's from. The YouTube, I put the YouTube in the chat. Let me actually put that back in there. Oh, that just went to panelists, all panelists and attendees. Okay, let me put my YouTube in there. That actually shows you, if you got that, that's my YouTube. Just Google Tim Shaw vegetable stock, and it should come up. How to supreme the oranges without leaking out all the juices. Just use a super, super sharp knife. If you wanted to, you could cut them over the bowl so you catch the juices. But I mean, when you cut citrus, you're cutting through all those little hairs, so you're gonna lose the juice. But a sharp knife is going to be the best answer for that. But like I said, I mean, that I consider that the chef's portion is when I cut that off. I squeeze the juice and drink it myself. Did you teach knife skills through Williams-Sonoma? I did not. No, I've never, I shop at Williams-Sonoma a lot, but I've never actually taught there. But the wines that would go well with this, you've got to think that this is sort of a North African kind of Spanish flavors with the coriander and the cumin and the dates and olives and stuff. So a wine that you could go like on the lighter, sort of spicier side, like a Torrontés or an Albarino, which are whites from Spain. Something like a Tempranillo or a Rioja might be a little heavy for it, but I think that would go nicely. It's Spanish, so either a nice light fruity Spanish or spicy Spanish wine, or you know, you could push the heaviness if you have the meat and the stuff on the side. I personally think Pinot Noir goes with everything. Pinot Noir is my favorite wine, so I would say Pinot Noir goes great with stuff. So I just got my Williams Soleum order for this spring, and it always hits right around tax time, and I'm like, oh man, but you know, they're great. Want to be creative, well, I list in the recipe, I list a whole list of variations of things that you could do, because again, I would love you to take this recipe and build on the basics, because it is kind of basic. If you wanted to add saffron would be great in this. You know, hotter spices would be really good in this. You could do this over you know, some sprinkle on top pistachios, toasted almonds would be fantastic. And one thing, I even mentioned it, preserved lemon would be a great addition to this dish. But since the salad is citrus, I didn't put preserved lemon in this, because that's just, I think that's a lot of citrus. But preserved lemon would be fantastic in this. But you know, make it yours. Pine nuts would be good on top. If they were toasted to kind of go with that, pine nuts would be really great. Almonds, I think, would be good. Pistachios would be fantastic. I mean, walnuts maybe could. I think it would be a little boring in this. But oh my God, lamb for sure. A grilled leg of lamb with this as the side. That's the Pinot Noir right there. It's, and a nice mint tea afterwards would be fantastic. I have a whole thing of mint that I bought just for this. I'm going to dry out and make some tea with that. So that would be fantastic. And the vegetable stock recipe is on my YouTube. You save your trimmings, save carrot, onions, celery, fennel, any of the aromatic vegetables, not potatoes, not turnips, anything like that, but the carrots and the alliums and stuff, celery. And I just save them in a bag. Where'd it go? Did I take it out already? Oh, it's already sitting out. I just have a bag of like several weeks worth of cut onions. There's some burdock root in there, because I made some burdock root the other day. And I keep it in the freezer. And then when it gets full, you just put it in a pot, put some water, bring it to boil for an hour or so, and then you strain it. You've got vegetable stock. Yeah, it's great, and it's you know, if you were doing this with chicken, you could certainly use chicken stock, but it's a great vegetable stock in the freezer. You use it for rice, you use it for grains, you use it for anything. So, yeah, so it's not really a recipe. Can you do anything with the fruits, such as orange? You certainly could, sure. I don't know if you could do anything with banana skins. They kind of go rancid pretty quickly. But the rinds of the fruits, you could certainly peel off the rinds and soak them in. Yeah, I mostly would compost those. But the fruits, particularly like the blood orange or the thicker oranges, you could soak them in some vodka and make a flavored limoncello type thing or something. But I just tend to squeeze the juices and drink the juices. Like I said, that's my secret stuff in the kitchen for me. But the rest you just compost for sure.
Tim, this has been absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
And, you know, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, our alumni everywhere. We looked like tonight we had people from Colorado and Hawaii joining us, which was really exciting. And I see that there must have been some love in the air at San Francisco State, because William mentioned in the chat that he and his wife, who he met at San Francisco State University, are joining us tonight.
Oh, nice.
Josepha or Josefa. I'm not, I want to make sure I'm
No.
saying that. And we are so thrilled that Dean Sivadas is joining us tonight. And
a little shout out to my cameraman.
Adam, hello. Well done. Award-winning camera work. And the doggies were cute. We like the special guest.
Yeah, there's the boy.
From your pups. Hi there.
Sebastian.
Hi, Sebastian. So thank you again. I want to thank my team again, to Ken and Nisha and Charlene, who are here behind the scenes. We're so thrilled that Dr. Johnson could join us and tell us a little bit more about the Hospitality and Tourism Management Department, and really do a plug for supporting that industry and making a comeback when we all start to move out of this pandemic. It's an industry that has been hit so hard, and let's all get back in there and support them as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to get some more information, check out the alumni website at connect.sfsu.edu, and the Lamb Family College of Business, which is cob.sfsu.edu as well. And thank you, Tim. Every time we get to see you, and your personality is just so infectious. I can't believe you can just fill an hour like it's a minute. I can watch you, right? I think everyone else here can watch.
This is literally the only social interaction I have these days. Adam laughs at me because when I'm sitting here in my kitchen, I've made friends with a crow that comes up outside. It sits on the fence and I bring it a nut and then it flies away. I'm like, that's really sad that my only interaction these days is with a crow. So anytime you want to do this, and I'm glad we finally got some vegetarian food in there too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again.
Awesome.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank
we
you, everyone.
hope to have you back soon, and happy Valentine's Day. It was so nice to share the love with everyone tonight. Go Gators.
Awesome. Thank you all very much.